Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to all our listeners. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Ramkumar Mishra, who is the former director, senior professor, and ONGC Subir Raha Chair on Corporate Governance at the Institute of Public Enterprise in Hyderabad, India. Dr. Mishra is an eminent scholar, researcher, and also a great observer of industry. And it is our pleasure that he has decided to grace us with his presence today on a talk titled Corporate Governance in the 21st Century. So without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Mishra to begin his presentation.
Thank you, Professor Raza. It's a great opportunity for me to deliver the talk. I'm extremely grateful to you, also to Professor Rajiv Kashyap, who is chair of the management department, and to my guru, Professor Sam Basu, who was earlier the dean at this university. It's a great university, and to be delivering a talk there is a matter of great pride. Now, coming to corporate governance in 21st century, I would say that this is the most debated subject today, in the sense that we have a global GDP of $100 trillion, and of this $100 trillion, about 80% comes from secondary sector and this tertiary sector, which by which I mean industry and services. Now, all these sectors, both the sectors, they are managed by enterprises. And therefore, if these enterprises are not managed well, that will then become a catastrophe for the world. So today, when we are talking of global governance, corporate governance becomes very important, not only because 70%, 80% of the GDP comes from industry and tertiary sector, but also because these days we have been talking about the sustainable development goals, and all the 17 goals in one way or the other are connected to corporate governance. If we don't have good corporate governance, it will be very difficult, I think, for the world to achieve those goals and come out of the trap of miseries and poverty. Besides this, I think what is more important is that 200 corporations in the world are bigger than 200 countries in the world. So that shows, I think, the importance of corporate governance. When I say this, I am reminded of a small episode where Golda Meir, then the Prime Minister of Israel, was meeting the President of the United States, Mr. Nixon. And Mr. Nixon looked at looked at the defense minister and told, "Why don't you give Moshe Dayan to us?" Then Golda Meir was very quick-witted. Golda Meir didn't take any time, and Golda Meir told that, "Yes, you can take Moshe Dayan, but give us General Ford and General Motors." Now this shows, I think, why corporate governance is important. Now today, in these 25 minutes or 20 minutes, we'll talk about the various aspects. I'll talk about what and why of corporate governance, its key attributes, corporate governance mechanisms, major reports on corporate governance, theories of corporate governance, models of corporate governance, international perspectives, issues in corporate governance, and the way forward. So when we say what and why of corporate governance, there is a very simple way of telling that. And we can say that corporate governance refers to the system of rules, practices, and processes by which a company is directed and controlled. It encompasses the mechanisms and relationships through which a corporation is managed and its objectives are pursued. This is very important in the sense that corporate governance is an instrumentality of achieving the public purpose and the objectives of corporates, which more or less will also be what a country might be trying to achieve. Now, over the years, there is a great expanse of corporate governance. We started with the narrow concept of corporate governance, which was only ROI. Then we came to the moderate concept of corporate governance, where we talked of vision, mission, and objectives. But now we have gone too far. And now we talk of ensuring the shift to corporate citizenship. So now corporate governance is just not managing an enterprise, but connecting enterprise to society. Now, when we talk of corporate governance key attributes, how does corporate governance functions? We to think of the board of directors, shareholder rights, transparency and disclosure, ethics and integrity, risk management, accountability and auditing, and stakeholder engagement. Now, in this, I think the most important is, I think, shareholder rights and board of directors, also transparency. These are the pillars of corporate governance. And corporate governance, a good corporate governance tries to achieve all these elements. What are the mechanisms of corporate governance? The mechanisms will be board of directors, board committees, corporate policies and codes of conduct, shareholder rights, financial reporting and transparency, internal control systems, risk management, external audits, stakeholder engagement, and regulatory compliance. Now we see that board of directors, they are a fulcrum. I think they are in between between the shareholders and the company. I think so. Board of directors is a buffer. I think between these two, not only between these two, but also between the government and the company, between the society and the company. Therefore, board of directors is a very important mechanism. How it is constituted, who goes in the board, what has been their background, are they ethical or not, have they been trained or not, do they find time to see what is happening in the company? And this all, I think, is important in the sense that the board of directors can't do all these things alone. They have to take the help of board committees. So in executing good corporate governance, we have to also see that the concerned company or the concerned corporate has right kind of committees in place. And then codes of conduct also, corporate policies are very important. How corporate policies should be developed? How did we come to that? What is the strategy of the company? What are the shareholder rights? What are the shareholders' obligations? Internal control systems are very important, and we see that most of the disasters which have happened in the corporate world have happened because internal control systems were not in place. And now these days we have gone beyond that, and we talk of risk management. Risk management is just not, I think, looking into the activities and seeing the extent of risk. But these days we have been talking about enterprise-wide risk management. Means each and every activity we see in terms of the existence of risk, how much risk that activity is causing, and what we should be doing to overcome that, so that the company and shareholders get the maximum benefits. External audits are very, very important these days. We have global auditors. These four biggies are there in every country. We have the audit system, and these external audits are also very, very important. Stakeholder engagement, I think, unless stakeholders they become a part of the company, I don't think we can then execute corporate governance in the way we should be doing. And then regulatory compliances. Each country has its own regulatory bodies. These regulatory bodies have their own fears, and companies have to ensure that these essential things which are required by them, they are met with. Major reports on corporate governance. Nobody talked about corporate governance in 1980s, 70s, but it was, I think, in 1992 that the Cadbury committee report was submitted in 1992 that looked into the financial aspects, because companies were not doing financially well. There were frauds, there were scheming, and there were episodes which were not good to tell. They were taking place there. So Cadbury committee report was submitted there. Then in South Africa, King's report on corporate governance came. Afterwards, in US, Sarbanes-Oxley came, because we had the problems in the banking system. Banking system is the crux, I think, of the finance system in the US. Then Hicks report came, and OECD principles today. These days we are talking about OECD principles. Now I understand today OECD have 38 member has joined the OECD today. It's a very formidable organization, and OECD developed its own corporate governance principles. G20 also adopted those principles, and OECD is going to revise those principles. They put a public notice, and they have asked for suggestions so that they can update their corporate governance principles. There are about 8 to 10 such principles. We'll discuss them later. UK corporate governance code also came into being, and then the stewardship code of UK came in 2010. And I just told that G20 and OECD principles of corporate governance, they came. We have number of theories of corporate governance. I won't discuss them much more. We have agency theory, we have stewardship theory, we have stakeholders theory, we have property rights theory, and all these amount to tell how corporate governance can be put on the sound track. They discuss about the weaknesses of the management and also the owners. They discuss the strength of a good leadership. They discuss the strength of connecting enterprise to society, and they also say how property rights of people within a country can be ensured. So there are different models. We have the Anglo-American model, we have the German model, we have the Japanese model, the Indian perspective, and all these models, as we shall see later, they talk of certain important things. For instance, the Anglo-American model, it talks of the shareholding, the rights of, I think, shareholders, how they can be protected. I think it leans more towards that. German model, it leans more towards how to manage the corporate governance. They have the two-tier board. We call them supervisory board and the management board. And the Japanese model points out that corporate governance can be best ensured through the banking system of the country, because banking system lends them money and banking system supervises the work of the corporates in that country. And in the Indian perspective today, we have gone too far. We have gone beyond these three, and we say that corporates should exist for society. We will see it later. We want a better connect and with the society. If society doesn't accept corporates, then corporates can't function the way they should be functioning. These are the 4 models, and I just talked about them. We'll just go through the German model, the Japanese model, yes, the Indian perspective in corporate governance. Now, when we talk of corporate governance, international perspective, we can see how it is taking place in the US, the United Kingdom, Germany, Japan, South Korea, China, India, Brazil, and Russia. And I just told you, in the case of United States, we see that active market for corporate control, I think, is the major issue in the area of corporate governance. The system there protects the investors' interest. It leans more towards accounting standards, and also talks of the standards set by NYSE and the NASDAQ. But mostly it is shareholder centric. In the case of UK, we find more or less they follow the same thing. We call it Anglo-Saxon model. But what they do there is that they have separated the role of chairman and CEO. In the case of US, that's not the case. In the case of US, we have the lead directors, etc. We have seen an independent director here. We have independent board and committees. They have come into being through corporate governance codes, and all the companies, they are required to disclose reasons for non-compliance with these standards. Germany, as I just brought out, they have the two-tier board. We have the management board, which sets the policy for the company, and supervisory board, which implements the policy. This is a very, very fine example, because we need decentralization and delegation, and we have to ensure a good functioning of the board. A good functioning of the board can't be done if all the board members alone want to do that. Therefore, they have separated the management board from the supervisory board. In Japan, as I just pointed out, it leans more towards, I think, the banking system. It is also like US and UK. It is also stakeholder-centric. Large boards, they comprise mostly of the executive directors. They don't have many independent directors. They don't put premium on independent directors and other kind of regulation. In South Korea, we talk of chaebol. Chaebols are very, very big enterprises, and these enterprises are directly controlled and seen, supervised by the president of the South Korea. And there, in the case of this Chaibos, they are led by, they came because of the Korean War, but they believe, I think, the corporate governance system, they believe in incentivizing the managers over there, and those who do well, they're incentivized on a very, very high scale, as against those who do not do well. They eliminate intergroup guarantee system, greater independence of standards, and greater rights to minority shareholding. China is just coming up. There is not much literature available on China, but I would say that China, in its most recent policies, have put in place a system of corporate governance. There we have board of supervisors who are they are composed of 33% employee representation. Then they have a board of directors, mostly company executive. They have little foreign ownership, and then the stage of transition. India, as I told you, India has gone too far when it comes to theory. India is doing extremely well. We have closed 49 of the Securities and Exchange Board of India, which, like US and UK, issues like guidelines as to how enterprises should ensure good corporate governance. There are majority of, as per the guidelines coming from the Securities and Exchange Board of India, 2/3, 1/3 to 2/3 can be non-executive directors. Board must meet at least 4 times a year. A director can't be a member for more than 10 companies. Now I think it's been reduced to 7 companies only. And this must be financially literate. There must be a good audit committee and extensive disclosure of related party transactions. And challenges to reform in India are that we have underdeveloped capital markets, and they are mostly controlled by the family groups. Brazil, the story is same, more or less same of India, but in the case of Brazil, corporate governance is mostly government ensured. Deregulation of capital markets is now taking place over there, and they have equal voting rights. 20% they have independent directors also. Russia, corporate governance systems are in transition. They were not there. They have a weak corporate governance system. They have concentrated ownership of shares, controlled by insiders, weak legal protections, lack of disclosure, inefficient capital markets, heavy involvement by the government. Now, these are the days of globalization, and these days of globalization, we see that we are no more a closed economy. We are an open economy, and in this open economy, capital markets, they are the source of providing finance. International investors are coming. Hostile market for corporate control is there, and trend toward international standards of governance are coming. Unlikely that a standard system will work well in all the countries, but one thing is very sure, that we are opening up, and countries no country can afford to lag behind in putting strong and sound corporate governance systems. Let's go back. Gender diversity, I think, is a very important thing. That's one of the problems of corporate governance, and we find that these Scandinavian countries have gone too far, and countries in Asia are too low. There we are in 60s, 55 to 65%. And in India, if you take the case of India, we are at 13 to 14%. So this is one very important issue in the area of corporate governance. Can we bring more women on boards? Can we have more minorities, I think, on the board? Can we bring, I think, international experts, I think, on the board? Can we widen, I think, the boards? I think that's a big challenge for all the countries in the world. They must, I think, now, they must diversify, and they must also internationalize. Related party transactions is one thing, I think, which has killed, I think, most of the companies, and most of the blunders that have taken place in corporates is because of RPTs. This is because the board of directors, they have gone far away, I think, from the ethical track, I think. At the same time, they also are little weak, I think, in terms of their dues. Audit committees have not been working the way I think they should work. Compensation issues are very, very important, and we see that sometimes I think it's the abusive compensation in India and in many other countries. We pay, I think, too much, I think, to people at the top, and I think that becomes a matter of debate. I think in various countries, should we pay them like that or not? And in the case of compensation, should it be only output, or should it be many other things which should be put in place to evaluate, I think, the performance of those who are leading the companies. Now, when we talk about corporate governance, we find that in the case of holding company, if it is doing well, but subsidiary, in the case of subsidiaries, corporate governance is not very, very strong. Now, ESG, I think, is another big thing which is coming in the area of corporate governance, environment, social, and governance. When we talk about environment, means we are taking corporation close to environment. When we talk of social, means we are taking enterprise close to society. When we are taking of governance, we are taking ESG. We are taking the company close to the governance. So ESG today is one thing which is driving the corporate governance scenario, not only in India, but anywhere in the world. And this comes very close to sustainable development goals also. And ESG and sustainable development goals, they will then create, I think, a bridge between enterprises and society. And then there can be harmonious, I think, functioning of both the society and the companies. Climate change is another very important issue. When I'm talking to you, I think it's raining cats and dogs in India. Half of India is now submerged underwater. We all know, I think, that climate, is not behaving the way I think it should be behaving, because we have also not behaved well with climate, and lots of things I think, we are doing. I think maybe that now climate change and these issues can also be connected to the compensation enterprises, also to the pricing in enterprises. So climate change is one issue which is now becoming a very major thing in the case of corporate governance in enterprises. Each and every transaction has to be seen in the context of climate environment. Does it foster environment? Does it take environment? Does it help environment to be like that? Or it creates problems, I think, for healthy living and for healthy climate over there. In India, I think we are doing a lot of things now. We are talking about green hydrogen, I think. We are talking about waste control. We are changing the methods of mining. We are changing the methods of cooking also. We have brought that in the course and syllabuses, I think, of the students. And this is one thing which is an important issue to be discussed, I think, as in the agenda of the boards of large enterprises in India. Succession planning is very, very important. And I think, as you will see, I think if you have a good person at the top, we have ensured half of the corporate governance. That's what people say. Risk management is very, very important. It was not there, but it has become a major part of corporate governance. Now we talk of risk oversight, risk culture, I think, risk identification, risk appetite, risk mitigation. How can we overcome risk monitoring and reporting, board expertise over there, external expertise over there, scenario for planning and contingency planning, and regular evaluation and evaluation of the functioning, I think, of the corporation. Cyber security is very, very important today, and each corporation now is stressing very hard on cyber security. We talk of cyber risks, we talk of cyber security expertise, cyber security strategy. I think they're discussed in all the boards. Cyber security awareness and training, external expertise, reporting and communication of cyber security related issues, and continuous evaluation and improvement. The way forward, how we can strengthen the corporate governance. One is stakeholder orientation. We should reach out, I think, all our stakeholders and be open with them and tell them what we have been doing, and have them engaged in the work that we do in the corporations, understand their feelings. Board diversity is very, very important. Now it is a diverse world, and we always say that the world is, it's heterogeneous. It's not homogeneous, and therefore I think we should try to bring different elements in terms of caste, religion, expertise, in terms of skill, in terms of gender, I think, in terms of minorities, we must, I think, throw our net very, very wide. Technological and digital transformation, India has gone too far, I think. World is going, I think, too far. There is one way, I think, of of making the world, I think, sustain itself and do better. ESG integration, I just talked. ESG should not only be a policy, but we must see that that three aspects of ESG, environment, social, and governance, they are put in practice. When we talk of governance, social, then what about child labor? What about, I think, the human rights? I think they're very, very important there. When you talk of governance, then how much regulation should be there? How much regulation should not be there? Environment, what we do, does it affect the environment? Does it foster or does it create problems? I think with the regulatory changes, we must also see that regulatory changes are something which help the enterprises to go, and regulatory changes should be need-based also. Technology-enabled governance tools so that we can also govern the enterprises not only during the course of meetings only, the board meetings, but before and after also it can we can be controlling them. Shareholder activism and engagement, this is very, very important, I think, and I will stress more on that. We believe in Socratic, Socratic method, and Socratic method is questioning. In any society, when people stop questioning and we stop them asking questions, that's the decay of the society and of that country and of that organization. So when we talk of shareholder activism, we must, I think, throw our arms open, and we should think that they are comrade in arms. We should allow people to question, to agree, to disagree. It should not be only a yes board, I think. Consensus should not alone take. We must have a group shift also. The group coming together is, I think, a danger for any company. Ethical considerations, very, very important. We should allow people to talk. I think we should allow people to have their own values, their own code of conduct. They should know. I think they should stand. I think we will say that this is something which is known as the real leadership. I think should come from them. And long-term value creation. Enterprises should not try to fleece people. Enterprises should not be myopic. The enterprises should, I think, they should think of long-term. I think long-term values, not only in terms of period, but how society and enterprises, they can continue, how we can make world globe, something where peace exists and people can live harmoniously. And now we should also go towards more digital governance and cybersecurity. I'll stop here, and thank you so much, I think, for the opportunity that is given to me.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mishra. And I believe that I have rarely come across such a comprehensive presentation of corporate governance in such a short period of time. In fact, you have covered every single idea that I thought I would ask you a question about, which is a wonderful thing, but also it presents very interesting challenges for the discussion, good challenges. So let me first begin by asking you one thing which I believe is on people's mind, is that the way corporate governance has developed, it appears that the shareholders have become more and more powerful. And one of the examples of that is the share buyback that goes on in the United States. And it is argued that other stakeholders are being shortchanged when the company takes its own money and concentrates its ownership. So what is your opinion of that? And how does it happen in different parts of the world? And what is your recommendation that people do to change things?
Thank you so much. It's a very, very interesting question, and I must thank you for that. Now, this buyback doesn't solve the real problem. In my view, I think corporate governance issues related to buyback should be solved in terms of R&D investments. Why not corporates invest in R&D? If they have extra cash, There is no need for them to go in for buyback and concentrate the control furthermore in the hands only of a few individuals. That is happening in case of India also. So when we look into the basic philosophy of a corporation, which was given by Burley and Mills in 1932 to 39, Burley and Mills, they talked that a corporation is a state within the state and the shareholding is widely dispersed. If that the case, then I think this buyback doesn't stand, I think, well, both in theory and when we talk in practice also. Buyback has led to concentration. Buyback has also led to practices which are not good. We have seen that happening in India too, and therefore I think we should try to discourage, I think, these buybacks. Instead of that, let them, I think, go for R&D. That is one thing. Let them find, I think, new markets over there. That, I think, is the second thing. And maybe I think they should go in for expansion, I think. That's, I think, real challenge, I think.
Okay, my second question is that because you did mention that some of the top corporations have been for the longest time bigger than governments, but their size and also their spatial reach and their ability to be controlled by governments is being reduced as their size increases. In certain societies, there have been efforts to break up large organizations by government, action. What is your opinion on that?
A very, very interesting question. I think that is what is happening, I think, and has been done, I think, in many instances in the US. And I would also say that in the case of very large corporations, we should try to do that so that the control in the hands of these corporates, it doesn't diminish the control which is in the hands of the government. In most of the countries, we have seen that these large corporations have also twisted the policies of the government, and they have impacted, I think, the policy of the government in their favor, which have been anti-people. And therefore, I think what has been done in the US, like antitrust law, and I think a number of things which have happened, I think, even I think in the case of Microsoft, I understand in the case of Microsoft also, there was a pressure that they should go for this kind of approach. I think it's a very, very good approach. In case of India, we have family-owned businesses, and these family-owned businesses also should try to now professionalize themselves. And this professionalism will only come when they come out. One very good example I can give you, little removed from what we are discussing, is the Indian Institute of Sciences. Now, Indian Institute of Sciences is number one in India, and maybe about 10th or 12th in the field of science and technology in the world. Tata's established, but Tata's are no more there. They have come out. Tata's, I think, that's one way, I think, of running the corporations. On the other hand, we have small-minded business people. They think that by cornering the control of the industry, they can have the pleasure, I think, of controlling the government. There have been cases, I think, here. We know Reliance, I think. If you go through the autobiography written by Dhirubhai Ambani, then Dhirubhai Ambani mentioned, I think, somewhere that he controls the government, I think. So there was a talk here also. Should we try to, I think, follow the practice what has been followed, I think, in some other good countries. So I think we should try to, I don't say dismantle, but there is nothing wrong when any enterprise goes beyond a limit. I think competition commission has been set up in India. Competition commissions have been set up in many other parts of the world. Competition commission has also been set up in many OECD countries. These commissions, I think, should look into that. This is one subject what you have mentioned, and I'm sure that you also have been knowing, I think, has been receiving the attention, I think, in India for last, I should say, 70 to 80 years. Concentration of control, I think, of business in the hands of people, owners.
Very nice. And perhaps my final question to you. No, actually, I'll have two. The first one is that what is your opinion of ownership concentration as a mode of corporate governance? We talked about compensation and we talked about market for corporate control, but this business of private equity in particular, where large sections of investment to particularly smaller corporations is by angel investors and venture capital. How does that impact corporate governance?
Thank you so much. There is a stage, I think, like we have children, our own children. Now we control them up to 18 years or 20 years, and then they start acquiring. I think they do things with their own wisdom. Likewise, I think these angel investors and private equity funds, they should know where they should stop, where they should come out, where they should keep, I think, only small holdings, and the corporate control authorities and regulators like Competition Commission, like antitrust, etc. in the US, they must ensure that the corporations and these private angel investors and private equity people are compelled to disperse, I think, the shareholdings. They have to do it with iron hand. If they do not do that, then now we are suffering from that. As reports, they point out that 1% people in India, they have 30% of the value, 30% of the GDP. Now, in many countries, we see, if you see inequity reports, we find, I think, 10% people they have about 60 to 70%. They may be happy with all that, but they can't ensure longevity because society will revolt against them. So what Gandhi told, and what I think people with wisdom told, that you should have that much only which you need, I think. But if you go for greed, any corporation, it goes for greed. I think that the point from where the society will uprise, I think, against these corporations. So corporations have come from society, and they must think that they are there because of society. Their roots are not upwards. Their roots are in the society. If they disregard society, I can very honestly say that people will not love such corporations.
Very nice, very nice. And so my final question to you does not have anything to do with corporate governance. But I want to say that you are a very wise person with over 4 decades of experience in academia. Many of the people who will listen to this will be students who will be beginning their careers after they finish their MBAs and degrees. So do you have any advice that you would like to give them that they can hold on as they move on with their lives?
One is that they should believe in diversity. Number two, they should try to reach out and see things on ground. Not only, I think, in ivory towers. The real world is not in ivory towers. The world is down below. We must see people, and the joy that we can get, certainly by making them happy, then seeing our own bank balances and our own position in the hierarchy of corporations. We will have a very good time and we'll leave the world with very great happiness if we serve people. And if we rid ourselves of religion, caste, these feelings are the worst feeling, I think. We must believe in humanity, I think. God has created one world, and we should think that we are part of one world. We should not divide the world into small pieces. Our education should help us in understanding this great truth. We should not become myopic and narrow-minded. We should try to interact, listen to people, understand what they say. They might not have had education, they might not have had resources, but they have a mind, I think. They have feelings. We must care for the feelings of people. And if we are happy, our one job is to make others happy. If we can't make others happy, we are good for nothing.
I think that is a wonderful point at which to end this. And once again, on behalf of everybody who will listen to this, it is my honor to thank Dr. Mishra for such an enlightening discussion about corporate governance, but it ended up being about globalization, geopolitics, management theory in general, and a lot of personal advice thrown in as well. Thank you very much, Dr. Mishra, and we hope to see you again at William Patterson University.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So kind of you, Professor Raza. Extremely kind of you.
Bye.
Thank you.